for over 10,000 years and has rich and Indigenous history. This land is the ancestral and unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. We are grateful to the Algonquin ancestors who cared for the land and water in order that we might meet here today. We're also grateful to the Algonquin people for their contribution in the making of the Rideau Canal, which runs through Smiths Falls. We're mindful of broken covenants and the need to reconcile with all our relations. Together, may we care for this land and each other, drawing on the strength of our mutual history of nation building through peace and friendship, and being mindful of generations to come. I'll look for a motion for approval of the agenda or any suggested amendments to the agenda. Moved by Jeff, seconded by Courtney. All in favor? That's carried. I'll ask for a motion for adoption of minutes for our March 2nd meeting. Moved by Courtney, seconded by Vicky. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. I'll ask for disclosure of monetary interest. I expect none. Okay, we're very fortunate today to have Tom Forche, who is the manager of housing programs from the County of Simcoe Housing Department. Tom, we've been looking forward to meeting you, to hearing about some of the successes and the programs in Simcoe, some of your best practices, some of the lessons you've learned over the last few years, and hopefully we'll be able to draw from that in deciding even our own path forward in many ways. So at this stage, I will turn the floor over to Tom. And if you want to, I guess, introduce Robin as well, but we'll be ready to move ahead.
Thank you. And through the chair, my colleague Robin Chapman is here today. She administers a lot of the housing programs that we deliver within Simcoe County. Our other program supervisors focus on our traditional nonprofit and RGI programming. So Robin is relatively new into her position, so she's kind of attending today just to observe and learn at this point, but happy if she has any practical observations that she can share with the group as discussion occurs, then absolutely feel free to jump in, Robin. Now, if it is okay with the chair and committee, I'll go ahead and share my screen. I do have a small presentation prepared today. It shouldn't take too long to run through the slides. And my understanding, it was the hope that the committee would just be able to engage in a discussion around the various programs that we do have. So I'll probably run through the slides relatively quickly. Hopefully then we have sufficient time to have a fulsome discussion afterwards.
Sounds good. Please.
Thank you. Now, can everybody see the slide up on the screen?
Yes.
Great. I'm going to try and see the reading notes on one screen and have the presentation up on the other. So bear with me if I fumble a little bit. So first of all, thank you for having us here today to present to you. We do have some very successful programming going on in the County of Simcoe, and a number of different areas are reaching out to us, particularly around our Second Suites program at this point. So I know that's an area of interest for this committee, so hopefully we can engage in a good discussion around that. So for starters, let me just tell you a little bit about the County of Simcoe. We have an estimated population of pushing 500,000 people. We are one of the largest counties in the province and one of the larger service manager areas. We do have a two-tiered municipality structure. So the County of Simcoe acts as consolidated service manager, and then our 16 towns and townships and 2 separated cities participate in our housing services under the service manager. And as service manager, we are responsible for developing and implementing the 10-year affordable housing and homelessness strategy. So our affordable housing programs, essentially are programs that we administer aligned to our 10-year housing and homelessness strategy, which takes a balanced approach between delivering on capital, so true bricks and mortar, new unit supply creation of an affordable nature, as well as what we call operating streams, which help fund rent subsidy programs and client benefit assistance programs within the private market sector to assist the ongoing affordability and access to adequate housing for lower income individuals and households. One of our key programs that we administer is rent supplement and housing allowance programs. So as service manager, we do receive funding from the federal and provincial government, as well as our county council, to deliver a variety of different programs. We participate in the Canada-Ontario Housing Benefit as the referral point for the County of Simcoe to that program. I believe it operates in your area as well. And that provides a relatively rent geared to income style assistance paid directly to a household in need to maintain their housing affordability. We offer 4 different varieties of rent supplement programs within the county as well to offset the cost of market rent for low-income individuals. We have our core rent geared to income program, which draws applicants off our centralized waiting list for rent geared to income, but places them in market units, and we provide a monthly payment to the private landlord to offset the cost of the market rent versus what the tenant can pay. We offer IAH and IAHE rent supplements through federal provincial funding as well. And those rent supplements are designed to be either a bridge between shelter assistance rates and market rent, or a specific flat rate every month for those not in receipt of social assistance benefits. That is one of our more complex programs that we run. It has definitely our greatest number of households participating within it. We're pushing across all programs 500 odd households participating in that variety of rent supplement programs, and it might be closer to 700 if we count the Canada-Ontario Housing Benefit. The next program I'd like to talk about is the secondary suites. And this is the one that initially sparked the interest for the town to have us come visit. And we do offer 2 different secondary suite programs in the county. We offer one that's funded through the federal and provincial commitments under currently the OFI funding envelope. And I'm not sure if your service manager is offering second suites under OFI as well, but it is an allowable program under that funding stream. The other program is municipally funded. So it is 100% funded by our levy and cost shared with our separated cities. And the key difference between those 2 programs is the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing requires that second suites funded with the federal provincial money be owner occupied in the primary unit, and then the secondary unit be rented out at an affordable rate. Within our area, we recognize that a lot of homeowners either didn't live in the property they were hoping to create the second suite within, or weren't confident they were going to live in the property and maintain it as their primary residence for the affordability period, which is set at 15 years. So that drove the need to create this other program where we could gain greater flexibility, and we are able to offer that to non-occupied homeowners to redevelop the property to include a secondary unit. It is allowing third units now as the planning regulations are easing within many municipalities, allowing second units as a right and third units in a lot of places. So we have yet to fund a third dwelling unit on a single residential property at this point, but there has been interest from our community. The municipally funded second suites program, it is open to developers as well. And we will offer them up to 4 suites under the program if a developer wishes to create secondary suites. So we can get a little bit more into the weeds on administering that program and what it might look like a little bit later on through the Q&As if you wish. I just want to quickly run through our other programming that we offer. So we do still offer our down payment assistance program to help low income households move into home ownership. thus freeing up rental stock within our community. This program has been highly successful since we first started delivering it in 2008. Granted, with our current housing market on the resale and new home market, we're not finding a lot of properties available that meet the requirements of this program that renters can move into the home ownership with. But in this program, we do provide a forgivable loan equal to 10% of the property, and it's not repayable if the home is maintained as the primary residence for a period of 20 years. And should that homeowner not maintain the home or the terms of the loan agreement through the affordability period, it does trigger a discharge. And in order to discharge that mortgage, we basically take 10% equity of the property back out and put it into a revolving loan fund that continues the growth in this program. And we've had so much success in the program that as homeowners cycle through this and change their housing options a few years into the program, we're now able to fully self-sustain this program without tax dollars. It's funded fully through the revolving fund at this point. And then we also offer urgent home repairs and accessibility modifications for low-income homeowners. And this is in an effort to keep lower-income homeowners in their home where they are stable, provided that the necessary repairs can maintain that home in a safe and healthy state for them to continue to occupy. And this really falls into our homelessness prevention aspect of our strategy to ensure that those homeowners can maintain their homes without having to exit their home and potentially hit emergency services or place a greater burden on our available rental stock within the county. Again, on the homelessness prevention theme, we offer a housing retention program. It's administered by a small team within our Ontario Works group here, and it provides housing related assistance by way of startup costs, paying for utility arrears, rent arrears. It can offer first and last month's rent and moving expenses. They are one-time benefits. So in a 24-month period, you're allowed to access at one time. And I believe the cap on that program currently is $2,000 per household. And then the last one I kind of want to talk about today is our development charge rebates. And County Council funds a reserve to offer these rebates from the levy to the tune of $200,000 a year. Now, this is not available within the separated cities because they collect their own development charges, and it's not subject to county development charges. So if an affordable housing development is proposed for one of the local municipalities, excluding the separated cities, they can apply for a development charge grant. And in order to offer that to them, they enter a forgivable loan agreement with us. And we at that time cover the county portion of the development charges. And in certain circumstances, the local municipality can do the same. That loan agreement is then registered on title of the property for the duration of the affordability period. There is an annual reporting requirement to ensure that the property is meeting the terms of the grant. And if it does not meet the terms of the grant, then recovery on a prorated basis of any grant issued would have to be returned to the county. But if the affordability period is maintained for that 10-year period, then it would be fully covered through our county reserves, and the proponent of that development would not owe county development charges for that development. So in working together for Housing Our Future, we do have an established municipal liaison group, and we struck this group. It's not a committee of council, but it works kind of in tandem with our Affordable Housing Advisory Committee to research, discuss, validate various different efforts that may be available within the planning sector, within municipalities' ability from the developer standpoint. And it really shares best practices amongst all of our local municipalities so that there can be consistent delivery of affordable housing development, whether you're in the township of Romero or in the city of Barrie. And definitely there's some differences in planning policies between those two types of municipalities, but the overall theme and the sharing of information is there. Members of this group also participate in the Regional Planners Association of Ontario's Affordable Housing Group. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there. My apologies. They track for us developments at the local level that meet our affordable housing definitions so that we can count them as an achievement on our strategy goals throughout our quarterly and annual reporting over that 10 years. And that group will also be highly invested in shaping our successor plan starting in 2024. And through that group, they've developed a sort of a set of tools and best practices that can be shared within the development community, whether it's individual households, larger scale developers, or other municipalities that maybe haven't encountered a specific type of development that they've experienced in the past. So it does talk about built form, planning requirements, flexible zoning. They can search for and identify surplus lands that might be appropriate for affordable housing developments in the future, so that should there be a call for proposals or a funding announcement, we sort of have a slate of zoning ready potential development sites across the county. And then even some of our member municipalities, similar to the town of Smiths Falls, have developed their own housing action task forces, affordable housing advisory committees of their own local councils, and struck kind of their own policies at the local level that work in tandem with programming that can be delivered through the service manager. For example, the town of Wasaga Beach and the city of Barrie have both developed a guide for people seeking to create a secondary suite within their unit. So it gets into detailing out what the building permit application process looks like, what the zoning requirements are, things that they may or may not have considered when planning it, how to find a designer to submit your drawings, all of those types of stuff. And then and they have that available on their website. The link is here, and I'll share the presentation through Carrie after the meeting so that you guys can see the links. And it's available for download. I'm sure that the town would have no issue with a gentle inquiry if you were looking to replicate something like this, using it as a guide. The city of Barrie as well has created a similar guide specific to their requirements. Now, the city of Barrie has a little bit stricter requirements on their secondary suites. And in particular, they've got various zones that secondary suites may or may not be allowed because of the proximity to the college. There's very specific housing requirements in that area. So they're trying really hard to get rid of the illegal rooming houses and stuff like that. So they've gone through and created a whole incentive zone or planning zone for that area. But the city of Barrie has actually done some really great work from the municipal level with their planning and zoning bylaws. They've just completely redesigned their official plan. I think it took effect in January, where they changed a lot of their their rules around intensification zones, etc. They've recently adopted a zoning amendment that allows housing as a right on institutionally zoned properties. So a church doesn't have to go through an appeal process or a zoning amendment to create an affordable housing development within their site, provided they have the proper footprint that meets the zone requirements. But it's not a separate process for them to have to go through now. The city has also struck a fund out of their own municipal levy to conduct feasibility studies on those types of developments, so that when an institutional property such as a church wants to go through the process, they can actually provide grant money to do a feasibility study on, the best plan and the highest use for that property. They've introduced relaxed parking policies or shared parking policies where residential redevelopment is occurring on non-residential land. So they're trying to be as flexible as they can within their own local policy development to incentivize affordable housing without significant investment of tax dollars. Another thing that they have done that does have tax dollar implications is they've dedicated a particular planning person to receive and streamline all of the development proposals that include affordable housing. So they get a single point of contact that navigates that application through all the various departments of the city. And they're developing guides for their chief building officials so that when they receive a container suite development application that they've never evaluated before, they now have shared information from other chief building officers about how they addressed the code requirements for that built form that nobody's ever experienced. So they're really being proactive in trying to foster innovation in their existing land area, creating flexibility in their zoning bylaws, incentivizing through their community improvement plan areas. I know they do offer grants and parking waivers for affordable housing within the downtown improvement core. So there's lots to going on there. And I know that the one planner who works heavily in the affordable housing area would be more than happy to talk with town staff. I think she's actually co-chairing the Planners of Ontario Affordable Housing Group this year. So I don't know if, Carrie, you have staff attend that, but Shelby White at the City of Barrie is a wealth of knowledge. So that kind of wraps up my slideshow, and I apologize if that was rambling. It was a lot of information to try and get out there, but I'm happy to entertain specific questions, how programming might relate within your town and your service manager area.
Great. Well, thanks so much, Tom. And we definitely see some parallels with Lanark County and of course, their service agreement with the county and the work they are doing on our behalf, the entire county. But as you mentioned, the secondary suites program is something that does not exist today at the county level or at our level. It's something we have a real keen interest in, as well as I think your numbers when it comes to the portable housing benefit rent supports may be greater than what we're seeing there. So anyway, we great insights. I'm sure there are a number of questions. I do have some myself, but I'll open it up to the committee first, give other people an opportunity to address you if they have questions. Yes, go ahead, Jeff.
Thanks, Tom. That was very enlightening. I'm curious about the metrics of this, when you started and what kind of improvement you've seen in terms of the number of affordable units. Like, how are you measuring success? The policies seem to be in place and look really good. What sort of metrics have you got? How have things changed since you implemented all these policies?
Thank you. And through the chair, the change since the original design of these programs has been incremental, and it's been driven by obstacles in delivery. When those types of things occur, we do go back to council for policy direction on it, particularly around the municipally funded programs. With the provincially funded programs, we have very little discretion. We do have to administer it according to the funding agreement and the guidelines of that program. But for example, in our secondary suites program, when we recognized the provincial program wasn't meeting the need, then we sought council direction to create a new program that very much ran almost identical to the provincial one. It just had greater flexibility. And through that program, we've actually been able to increase our new unit creation by 150% each year since 2015. So the municipal program is actually funded, let me just run the percentage, approximately 170% of what we provide through the provincial funding. So right now we are offering $30,000 per unit to create a secondary suite. We may have to reconsider that as the cost of construction has skyrocketed in the last 18 to 24 months. And that was done previously as well in 2017, I believe it was. After 2 years of implementation, we recognized that our take-up wasn't as great as what we had hoped. So we sought direction from council to increase that from 25,000 to 30,000 in the hopes of incentivizing more households. So our metric that we really measure in the success of that particular program is the number of new units that come on street through that we directly fund. And then that rolls up into our reporting on a quarterly and annual basis under our housing and homelessness strategy. So our strategy requested we take a balanced approach between capital and operating streams. And so the Ontario Renovates secondary suite program and the municipally funded secondary suite program, they fall into the capital stream. So that is a net new unit being added to the supply that is never going away. It's not going to end. Its affordability may end at some point, but it's still an addition to the rental stock. So that would be the same as us calling an RFP out to a developer to build a 150 unit building that has to be rented at 80% of AMR for 15 years. Yeah, the affordability period does expire in 15 years and they're no longer required to rent it out at 80% of AMR, but it's still net new purpose-built rental units coming on street in the market. And the greater we can increase our supply, provided our demand stays flat, it would actually technically reduce based on the supply-demand ratio. Unfortunately, we're seeing our demand increase in a greater proportion than our supply can. So we're constantly seeing the pressures on our market rent rates, on our vacancy rates in the county. And it's been exacerbated through the pandemic. The amount of influx of residents coming into the area from the larger centers with the flexibility to work from home, et cetera, has put incredible pressure on our existing rental stock.
Any follow-up, Jeff?
Yeah, I'm curious about how councils work. And I know earmarking 30,000 per secondary suite would guarantee a fairly robust conversation at any of the council tables around Lanark. And I'm curious how, because that money had to come from somewhere else, I'm certain. So I'm curious about how you shepherd that through. And they got to that point of actually suggesting you go from 25 to 30 when, you know, I know of one community in Lanark where they're offering 5,000. So how did you get to 25 and then to 30, given the politics around all this?
Yes. So thank you. And through the chair, the amount that we offer, that is a maximum. It's not a minimum. It's a maximum. So in the case where a suite maybe exists, but is not legal, and they're just looking to bring it to code and register it with the municipality, we would only fund the necessary upgrades. So that suite might only cost $8,000 or $10,000 to create. But the evidence to support the change from the 25,000, which was the recommendation under the provincial program when it rolled out previous to the municipal program, we collect as part of our documentation the project budget form from the homeowner that identifies their cost to create the suite. So we do that for two purposes, so that we can track it and we could analyze it. It would take some compilation to pull everything together and do that analysis. But it also allows us to determine that we're not providing more tax dollars to fund that suite than it's actually needing to be created. So through collecting those project budgets, we were able to determine, I think at the time of writing that report, and I was not the author, so I'm just going by memory here. At the time, we had analyzed the 30 or so most recent budget forms and recognized that the cost to create a suite on the low end exceeded $50,000, and on the high end was exceeding $120,000 for cost to actually bring that suite online. So with the curtailment and activity on new applications, we had enough evidence to support that we still weren't funding 100% of the costs. Like the homeowner was still putting skin in the game. They were taking some risk in this delivery as well, the program delivery as well. So council saw the value in it. And since then, we've been able to maintain our program at essentially full capacity, committing our annual budget each year. And similar to what I described in the home ownership program, if the secondary suite that we fund ceases to maintain its affordability agreement. So if the homeowner sells and the new owner is not willing to assume the agreement, or we find out it's not being rented out at the affordable rate, or it's been vacant for too long, that triggers a repayment requirement. So the prorated grant amount, so it self-reduces at 1/15 per year. So whatever's remaining that's not been earned through the affordability period is owed back to the county, and that goes into a revolving fund as well to augment our in-year budget. So we can further the program, we can grow it if the wait list is not able to be fully worked through in the current year budget. We can go to the revolving fund and allow homeowners that otherwise would have had to wait for January or April for new funding to be approved to go ahead. And then we fund that through a payback from a former suite.
Cool, thank you.
Before we go on to Vicky, what is your annual budget for secondary suites, and how much of that is coming from the municipal levy?
From municipal levy right now, we were funded up till the 2021 budget year at $500,000 per year, with the goal of creating between 20 and 21 suites. In 2021, mid-year, council augmented our budget, adding another $150,000, bringing our total annual budget to $650,000. Then in 2022, when our county council budget got passed, they maintained the $650,000 annual commitment and determined the program to be in perpetuity instead of an annual reconsideration.
Great to hear. Vicky?
Yes, I have two questions. One, if the secondary suite defaults on its affordability from the new and old owner, who's the one who has to pay back the repayment?
So if the original homeowner that received the grant sells their home and the new purchaser does not want to assume that agreement and continue renting that unit out as an affordable rental for the balance of the affordability period, then it would be the original homeowner would have to repay that loan. And all of these loans are mortgages on title. So that is our trigger. So anytime there's a refinance, anytime there's a transfer transaction, we get notified as a mortgage holder, and we work through the process of either discharging or postponing our interest. So I probably should have mentioned that earlier on, that really is the triggering mechanism. The other thing, the secondary suite program is only available to properties on owned land that we can register against title. So we haven't had one yet in a condominium development, so we haven't worked through that potential headache, but they're not eligible on rented land or on reserve lands at this point because we can't register on title.
Thank you. My second question would be towards the rent arrears. I'm curious, you mentioned that council puts towards each year puts towards money towards rent arrears and all that on top of what the Ontario Works and all that offers. I was just curious, how much does council put towards it?
I am not 100% sure what the annual budget is on that. That particular program is funded with provincial dollars. County Council doesn't actually charge the levy or request levy funds to fund that program. It's provincially funded.
How is it provincially funded? Because I'm trying like so hard to push that out here because it's desperately needed. Well accessed out there, as you mentioned. So how would I get somebody in town to provincially access these funds?
They would only be available through the county as service manager. So in Simcoe, we fund it through Chippy. There's a few different streams of funding available that could fund that type of program. Here in Simcoe County, we do use the Chippy program, soon to be Sorry, I don't know if I can talk about that yet. Okay. You guys have the letter next in your agenda. Anyway, they're renaming it. And that's the funding source that we use to fund our housing retention program that covers rent arrears, utility arrears, first and last, moving expenses, etc.
A wide spectrum. Thank you so much. And I really do hope you're taking notes. Hint, hint, wink, wink. Thank you.
Thanks, Vicki. Additional questions? Tom, I guess if you could go back 5 or 6 years, 7 years ago, I think 2015, you mentioned you really got this rolling. Based on what you know now, what would you do differently? Where would you apply your resources?
I think a balanced approach was the right approach. I don't think that would change. Maybe a little bit less investment into the operating type programs like time limited rent supplements, etc., and more funding towards bricks and mortar creation. The trouble with that is the lag time in actually bringing that unit to market. You're not able to make any impact in your emergency sheltering system. You're not able to impact your social housing waiting lists. You're not able to impact that struggling senior that's calling your counselors every other day looking for help because that unit is 9 months or 5 years away from being available. And then is it going to be offered to that one individual or not? So that's why we took a balanced approach. It would have been nice to see more bricks and mortar units created, although we have had great success in bringing those on stream, but they are all in the tail end of our strategy. So if you were to look at our tracking of our our achievement against targets. In the first 4 years of our strategy, almost 100% of the units that we achieved against our target were created through a rent subsidy. Then we start seeing our rental developments go from planning stage to occupancy, and our second suites coming online, because all of these programs took time to create and market and get the intake. You know, for a secondary suite, it could take from the time of application to the time of occupancy can still take 24, 30 months. It depends on how cooperative the municipality is with zoning and building permits. It depends on the robustness and abilities of the homeowner, if they've engaged general contractors or if they're trying to do it themselves and only taking skilled trades when necessary. There's a lot of variables that go on. What we have found in the past, and it has gotten better, is that the zoning requirements was one of the largest obstacles to homeowners being able to move quickly on their suites. They were needing a minor variance or an amendment, and that was taking 8 months, a year. If it had to do with the conservation authority, it could take even longer. So as the Bill 184 has been rolling out, and some of the Planning Act changes around, you know, secondary units as a right within residential zones, a lot of that noise has quieted down as municipalities are updating their zoning bylaws.
Thank you.
One of the things, sorry, to go back to your previous question, what other things would we do different? One of the unforeseen burdens of this program is the ongoing reporting and the transactions, the staff time in order to facilitate some of these postponement and discharge processes. With having the mortgage register on title, it is great because we're not at risk of losing money from the program if there's a default. Where it causes a challenge, and it's two-sided, not only is it a burden on staff, it's also a burden on the homeowner. Because if a homeowner wants to refinance their mortgage, then they got to, you know, work with us to confirm that we're willing to postpone. It's a whole exercise to confirm there's still value in the property, that are, you know, the public purse is protected. Then some lenders don't want to have a second mortgage on title. They want to be the only thing on title, which is forcing the homeowner to pay us out. And they may not have thought about that, or, you know, weren't prepared to have to do that, but they pay us out anyway. So now we've lost an affordable unit. Yes, there's a unit still created, but we've lost that affordable unit for a low-income household.
So some great experience you've learned over the last number of years.
Yeah.
We're so happy to have you here.
Yeah, another lesson learned is another lesson learned would be advanced planning goes a long way. So we've had a number of inquiries from prospective participants in the Second Suites program who are looking to purchase in a new development builder community. So they're purchasing a new construction home. They haven't finalized their plans yet. It's getting the municipality to understand that they want to apply down the road for a second suite to confirm the zoning. So we can do a conditional commitment when they actually get title, but that they can have their builder accommodate that suite from the time of initial construction, instead of having to cut a concrete foundation to put a secondary entrance to the lower level of the suite, or to go and upgrade the fire separation. They can do it ahead of time. The problem is that we can't register our mortgage until the title is transferred, which is not until after the actual close of the transaction. So the homeowner we basically were committing but not paying until they have title, and then we're paying them at the tail end. So they have to construction finance that investment that we would otherwise make. It gets very tricky and complex in dealing with the builder, the municipality, our legal department, their lawyers, so that everybody understands how the money's going to flow and what the requirements are.
It also creates greater affordability for the homeowner having that
It
rental income.
absolutely, it cuts the cost of the suite in half.
Okay, we're going to wrap up, but Vicki, go ahead. You've got a final question or two.
Yeah, just one question, quick one. Just curious what you define, what your county defines affordability as. Is it 80% of average market rent, or is it 30% of one's income?
Good question. It's both. From a operating subsidy, so a rent supplement type of an investment, we're looking at 30% generally as the rule of their income. From the capital side, so new unit creation, secondary suites or affordable housing developments, we do use the 80% of AMR or 100% of AMR, depending on the rule and the program that's being funded on. In Simcoe County, we've had to request alternate AMRs for many, many years in a row because the ones produced by CMHC are not reflective of our current market. So we actually use 80 or 100% of our alternate AMR.
And how do you obtain the alternate AMR?
That requires a business case to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, in which they want to see evidence of the actual rental rates in various areas within the service area. So for Lanark County, it would include the rural and urban areas, and probably have to be split into various different zones and then by unit size.
Okay. So
we have a team of research analysts that spend about 3 months in the fall just gathering rental ads. And then we analyze about 3,000 or 4,000 rental ads and compile them into averages and then submit that to the ministry.
Okay, because that is also an issue here. I think it's recognized at our level and also the county level that data we're working with is not relevant to today's average market rents. The collection of the information to build the business case is the most laborious part. And if it's not being conducted on a year-round basis, we have this issue in Simcoe County is we miss 9 months of the housing market that may be completely different than the 3 months in which we're collecting the ads, but we rely on our students through an internship to collect that information for us. There's a best practice we can probably share with our partners.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, Tom, Robin, thank you very much today for being here, sharing your wisdom, your experience, your insights. We're glad that we have this also recorded. We can go back and listen to it again. Missed. And I think to the committee, I think we'll have further discussions on this at an upcoming committee meeting.
Okay.
So we will, I'm going to bypass the correspondence item. That's for information that's available on the links on the website. And based on our time today, we'll move to wrap up. So look for a motion for adjournment. Moved by Courtney, seconded by Jeff. All in favor? Okay. Thanks again, everyone, for your participation today.
Thank you.
All the best.
Thank you.
And Carrie, you've got our information if you need anything else, and I'll flip you our slides.
Thanks, Tom. I do. Thanks very much.
Okay. All right. Take care, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.